My name is Wes Coburn. I'm 33 years old, and the first thing I saw when I drove back into Ashfield Hollow after 8 years gone was a yellow notice stapled to the door of my father's sugar house. Tax lien. Public auction. A date printed in the kind of cold, black ink that does not care who you are or what a place meant to you. I sat in the truck with the engine ticking and the March cold pressing in through the glass, and I understood that I had come home too late to be a good son, and maybe just barely in time to be a useful one. I want to tell you the truth about how I left, because that is the part I am least proud of. 8 years ago, I stood in this same driveway and told my father that boiling sap was a fool's living. I told him the future was not in the trees. I had a business idea, a bright shining thing about selling small batch specialty foods to people in the city who would pay a great deal for a story printed on a label. I was 25 and certain, and certainty at 25 is a kind of cruelty you inflict without knowing it. I packed a bag. I did not fix the fence I had promised to fix, and I did not say a real goodbye to Maggie Thibault, the girl who had grown up in the house down the road, the girl I had loved since we were both too young to have a word for it. I told her I would send for her once I was set up. I never sent for her. That is the plainest way I know to say it. I let the months become years, and I let a phone go unanswered, and I let a good person wait for a man who was too ashamed to admit he was failing. Because I did fail. The business collapsed slow and then all at once, the way those things do. I spent everything. I borrowed more. And at the end, I had a storage unit full of pretty jars and a debt that took me 3 years of hourly work to crawl out from under. And the whole time, the thing I could not stop thinking about was not the money. It was the fence I never fixed. It was my father, Earl, up on that ridge alone, tapping trees with hands that were getting older every winter. It was Maggie's face the last time I saw it, already learning not to expect anything from me. So that is the wound, and I will not dress it up. I am the man who left. I am the man who told people I loved that they were not enough, that the life they offered was too small. And now I was back, 33 and humbled and broke in a truck that was not even mine, staring at a piece of paper that said the one thing my family had ever truly owned was about to be sold out from under an old man who was too proud to tell me he was drowning. I did not come home to be forgiven. I want to be clear about that. I came home because my aunt had called me, the only person in that town who still had my number, and she had said, in a voice with no warmth left in it, "Your father is going to lose the sugarbush, Wes, and he will die before he asks you for a thing." I came home to work. Everything else, the forgiveness, the girl next door, the chance to be a man worth staying for, all of that I did not think I deserved and did not let myself hope for. I was wrong about that in the end, but it took a whole sugar season to teach me why. Here is the promise I can make you, sitting here now on the far side of it all. The trees I threw away, and the woman I threw away turned out to be the exact two things that finally made me into someone who could stay. Not the success, not the city, not the story on the label. It was standing in the freezing dark at 3 in the morning, feeding a fire under a pan of boiling sap, next to a woman who had every reason to hate me and fed the crew anyway, that a real man finally got built out of the ruined parts of the old one. I did not become worth loving by winning. I became worth loving by not leaving when it got hard. That is the whole of it. That is what this season gave me, and I would trade none of the pain it cost. But I am getting ahead. Let me take you back to the first week of the run, when I still thought I was too late for anything but shame. Sugaring is brutal, and I had forgotten how brutal. Maple syrup does not come from a store shelf. It comes from cold and from labor, and from a very short window when the days go above freezing, and the nights drop below it, and the sap in the trees begins to move. When that window opens, you do not sleep. You tap the trees, hundreds of them, drilling and hammering the spiles and hanging the buckets, or checking the lines of tubing that run downhill to the tank. You collect, you haul. You boil, and boiling is the cruelest math there is, because it takes roughly 40 gallons of clear watery sap to make a single gallon of syrup. 40 to 1. You are standing over a roaring evaporator watching an ocean of sap turn to steam, hour after hour, feeding wood into the firebox, skimming, watching the thermometer, and you cannot walk away, because sap that scorches is sap that is ruined. My father could not do it alone anymore. I saw that the first morning. Earl came out to the sugar house in the gray dawn, moving like a man made of old rope, and when he saw me standing there, he stopped, and his face did a thing I will never forget. It wanted to be glad. It fought being glad. Pride won the way it always won with him, and all he said was, "You come to watch it get sold, or you come to work." I said I came to work. He nodded once, like that settled nothing, and handed me a drill. We did not talk that first week. We worked, and the town, when I went down to it, was worse than my father, because my father at least had blood reasons to let me back in. The town had none. I walked into the feed store and conversations stopped. I got the nod men give you when they have decided about you, and the decision is not kind. Somebody had left, and somebody's father had struggled, and everybody knew it, because in a place that small, everybody always knows. I had been the golden boy who thought he was better than the hollow, and I had come crawling back with empty hands, and there is no forgiveness a small town enjoys withholding more than that one. And then there was Maggie. She ran the general store now, the one with the bakery counter in the back, the one her mother used to run. I had to go in because we needed supplies, and because there was nowhere else, and I stood in the doorway like a coward for a full minute before I made myself walk to the counter. She looked up. 8 years fell away and did not fall away, both at once. She was 31 now, and she wore it well, steady and clear-eyed, her hair pulled back, flour on her forearms. And when she saw it was me, nothing on her face broke. That was the worst part. She had already done all her breaking, years ago in private over me, and there was none left to show. She just went very still and very polite, the way you are polite to a stranger, and she said, "What do you need, Wes?" Not a question, a transaction. I bought what we needed, I paid. I said thank you. I did not say any of the 10,000 things, because every one of them would have been for me and not for her, and I had spent 8 years doing things that were for me. At the door I stopped, and I did say one small true thing. I said, "The store looks good. You made it yours." And she said, without looking up, somebody had to stay and take care of things. And that was the first of the 2 lines that would run through my whole season like a wire pulled tight. I did not fix everything with a speech, because you cannot, and I had finally learned you cannot. What I did instead was small things. That is the second week of the sugaring, and the small things are what I remember. Her store had an old boiler in the back, the one that heated the water for the whole building, and it had been dying for 2 winters, and she had been babying it because a new one cost money she did not have. I knew boilers. 8 years of failing at business had at least taught me to fix the machines nobody else would touch. So one cold morning I came in early before she opened, and I asked her plainly if I could look at it. I did not make it a grand gesture. I made it a repair. She watched me for a while, arms crossed, not trusting it, and then she went to make her bread and left me to it, which was its own kind of permission. It took me 2 days. I found the cracked part. I found a rebuilt one in a scrapyard 2 towns over. I nursed the old beast back to life. When it kicked on and held, warm and steady, she came and stood in the doorway of that back room and looked at it for a long moment, and then she looked at me, and something in her face was not softer exactly, but was paying attention. She said, "You didn't have to do that." I said, "I know. That's kind of the point." She almost smiled. She caught it before it landed, but I saw it try, and she started feeding the crew. That is how it works up there in the season. When the sap runs hard, you round up whoever you can. Neighbors, kids, old men who used to sugar and cannot stay away from it. And they come and help, and somebody has to feed a crew that is working a 20-hour day. Maggie started sending up food. Big pans of it hot from the bakery. She never brought it herself at first. She sent it with somebody. But it came, every night the run was hard, and everyone knew whose hands had made it. and everyone knew she was doing it for a sugar bush that belonged to the family of the man she had every right to despise. She was not doing it for me. I want that understood. She was doing it because the Coburn sugar bush was part of the hollow, and she was a person who took care of things, and she had told me so herself at the counter. But I ate her food in the freezing dark, and I understood I was being given something I had not earned, and I did not waste it. My father, meanwhile, was thawing about 1 degree a week, which for Earl was practically an avalanche. We started talking over the evaporator, because you cannot be silent forever standing next to another man at 3 in the morning. He told me things about the trees I had forgotten or never known. He showed me the oldest maples, the ones his own father had tapped, and the way you read a tree and where the good sugar content ran on the ridge. And once, only once late, when he was too tired to guard himself, he said, "I kept your room." That was all. I kept your room. I had to go outside for a minute after that and stand in the cold and get myself together. But there were things none of us said, and those were the loops that pulled the season tight. Nobody said out loud why I had really left. Not the business story, the true one underneath it, which was that I had been terrified. Terrified of becoming my father, of a small life on a cold ridge, of being a man the wider world would never hear of. I had dressed up cowardice as ambition and called it brave, and I had never once admitted that to a living soul. That was the first loop. The second was the arithmetic nobody wanted to say. Could one season of syrup actually make enough to clear a tax lien that had been growing for years? I did the numbers late at night, and the numbers were ugly. We needed a run better than any run in a decade, and we needed a price better than the wholesale rate, and we needed nothing to go wrong, and in sugaring something always goes wrong. The third loop was Maggie, and whether a person can forgive a thing like what I had done, or whether forgiveness was even the right word, or whether the most I could ever earn was to be tolerated and fed and never again let inside. And the fourth loop had a name, and the name was Preston Vance. Vance was a resort developer, a smooth, unhurried man who wore expensive boots that had never touched real mud, and he had been circling the ridge for a year. He wanted the maple ridge, not the syrup, the view. He wanted to level the sugar bush and put up a resort, chalets and a lodge and a road, and he had made my father an offer once that Earl had thrown him off the property for. Now the auction was coming, and Vance did not have to convince my father of anything. He just had to wait and outbid and let the tax man do the evicting for him. He came to the diner while I was there once and sat down uninvited across from me and said, friendly as a snake, "You seem like a practical young man. You left once because you understood there's no future in sap. Nothing's changed. Let the old man keep his pride, and let me keep you both from going broke." I told him to enjoy his coffee, but he had put his thumb exactly on the bruise, because a part of me, the old part, the part that ran, wondered if he was right. There was one thing on that ridge that answered him, though, and it was not an argument. It was an object. On a shelf in the sugar house, up high, wrapped in an old feed sack, sat a tin. A single sealed quart tin of maple syrup, dented, its label gone soft and brown with age. It was the founding tin. The first quart of syrup my grandfather ever boiled, the year he cleared the first taps and started the whole thing, sealed and never opened, passed down from his hands to my father's. It was the family's proof that we came from something, that a Coburn had once stood on that ridge with nothing and made something sweet out of cold trees and patience. My father had opened it exactly never. It came down for the biggest moments, and then it went back up, unopened, because in our family you did not open the founding tin. You saved it. You saved it for the day the thing it stood for was truly won. I asked him that first month, half joking, if we ought to open it and drink to the season. He looked at me like I had suggested something obscene. "That tin gets opened," he said, "the day this bush is safe and free and staying in this family. Not before. You want to open it, boy, then earn it." And he put it back on the shelf, and every time I passed it after that I felt it up there like an eye, watching to see whether I would run again before I earned the right to break the seal. Then came the night everything turned. I have thought about that night more than any other in my life. It was the third week. The weather did the thing every sugar maker prays for and dreads. It broke wide open. A hard, warm front rolled in behind a string of deep, cold nights, and the trees, which had been holding, all let go at once. The sap ran like it had not run in 15 years. The tanks filled faster than we could boil. And at the same time, the forecast turned mean. A freezing storm coming in behind the warmth. Ice that would lock the lines and could snap the old tubing across half the ridge if we did not get the sap down and boiled before it hit. It was the whole season in one night. Boil it now, all of it, or lose the best run in a decade and maybe the lines with it. There was no way the three of us could do it. My father knew it. He stood in the sugar house door looking at the full tanks and the black sky with an expression I had only seen on men who have decided to lose with dignity. And that is when the trucks started coming up the road. Maggie had made calls. I found that out later. She had gotten on the phone to every house in the hollow, and she had said, in that plain voice of hers, "The Coburns need hands tonight or they lose the bush." And whatever they thought of me, they came for her, and they came for the ridge. And by 10 at night, that sugar house was full of neighbors I had wronged or disappointed or simply left, all of them rolling up their sleeves. And Maggie came with them. Not sending food this time, coming. She walked in out of the cold with her coat still on and looked at me across that steaming room and did not say anything kind. But she stayed, and she worked all night at my side. We boiled until dawn. It is a blur of fire and steam, and the sweet smell so thick it gets in your clothes for a week. We ran that evaporator flat out, all of us in shifts, hauling, feeding wood, drawing off the finished syrup gold and perfect, jug after jug after jug. Somewhere in the deepest part of the night, 3 or 4 in the morning, the storm just starting to spit ice against the windows, Maggie and I ended up alone at the pan while the others rested, and the wall I had been so careful about finally came down. Because you cannot hold a wall up when you are that tired and that close to another person and that alive. I did not plan what I said. I said I was a coward. That's the whole truth of it. I wasn't chasing anything, Maggie. I was running from being small, and I called it a dream so I wouldn't have to call it what it was. And the worst thing I ever did wasn't leaving. It was letting you wait. I am so sorry that I let you wait. She was quiet for a long time, feeding the fire, the light of it on her face. And then she said the line I had been carrying since the day I drove back in. She said, "You came back for the trees, not for me." Not angry, almost gentle, which was worse, stating a fact she had made her peace with. And I heard myself answer, and I meant it all the way down. I said I came back for everything I threw away. The trees and my father and this town, and you. You most of all and last, because I didn't think I had the right to come back for you first. She did not fall into my arms. This is not that kind of story, and she is not that kind of woman. She just looked at me for a long moment with the firelight moving, and something in her that had been locked for 8 years turned over, once, like a key that has not been used in a very long time. She said, "That's a start." And then she went back to work, and so did I, and we finished the season's best night side by side as the ice came down, and it was enough. For then, it was more than enough. By morning, we had boiled the whole run. Barrels of it. The best syrup, everyone said, that the ridge had made in a generation, dark and rich from those old deep cold trees. We had beaten the storm, but we had not yet beaten the auction, and the hardest part was still ahead. Because sugaring punishes you for hope. 2 days after that glorious night, the ice storm we had raced did its damage in a way we had not counted on. A limb came down under the ice on the far slope and tore out a main line. And worse, the evaporator, run flat out all that night, cracked a seam in the flue pan. Without the evaporator, there was no more boiling, and the season was not over, and a cracked pan is not a thing you fix with tape. It is a specialty part, a long-wait, real money we did not have. I stood looking at that split seam with sap backing up in the tanks, and I felt the old thing rise in me. The panic, the voice that said this is where it falls apart, this is where you fail again, and you know how to make failure stop hurting, you leave before it lands. I want to be honest about that moment, because it is the truest test I ever faced. Every cell in me wanted to run. Not to the city, just away to somewhere the failure could not find me. I even walked to the truck. I put my hand on the door, and my father came out and saw me standing at that truck with my hand on the door, and he did not yell. He was too old and too scared to yell. He just said, "So that's it then." And Maggie, who had come up with the morning food, stood behind him, and I saw on her face the thing she had feared since the day I came back, the thing she had been too smart to let herself hope against, that I would do it again, that I would leave when it got hard, that she had been a fool to let even a crack of light back in. I took my hand off the door. I turned around and I said, "No, that's not it. We're going to fix the pan." And I meant it, and it was the first promise in 8 years I did not break. We found a welder 2 counties over who worked on old evaporators, a gruff man who owed my father a favor from 30 years back. And he came and he brazed that seemed through a whole night, and it held. I paid him with the last cash I had, and the promise of a case of the good syrup. We repaired the torn line in the sleet with numb hands. We lost 2 days, but we did not lose the season. And every hour I stayed and fought instead of running, I watched the fear go out of Maggie's face a little more, and something better come into it. The auction was set for the last week of March, right at the tail of the run. And here is where the arithmetic that had haunted me all season finally had to come due. Wholesale syrup, even a lot of it, even the best in a decade, was not going to be enough to clear that lien and outbid a man like Vance with a developer's checkbook. I knew it. My father knew it. We needed more than a good season. We needed a miracle, and I had stopped believing I was owed any. So I did the one thing my failed city years had actually taught me. I knew how to sell a story on a label. I had been wrong that the story was worth more than the thing. But I was not wrong that a true thing with a true story is worth a great deal to the right buyer. I took a jug of our darkest, richest syrup, and I drove it 3 hours to a company that supplied specialty foods to real kitchens, restaurants that pay for provenance, for single origin, for the genuine article from one old ridge. Not a story I made up. The real one. 100-year-old sugarbush, a founding family, deep woods trees, the last true small batch on the mountain. I let them taste it, and they tasted the difference those old cold trees make, and they wanted all of it, the whole season and a contract for seasons to come, at a price no wholesaler would ever pay. It was not quite enough on its own, but it was enough to change the arithmetic, and when the town heard what we had, the Hollow did a thing that still undoes me to think about. They put in small amounts, most of them, but there were a lot of them. Neighbors buying futures on next year's syrup. The diner, the church, old sugaring families, and Maggie, who put in more than she could afford from the store. Not for me. For the ridge. For the idea that a piece of the Hollow does not become a rich man's view. On auction day, we stood in the cold on the courthouse steps. My father in his good coat, Maggie beside me, and Preston Vance in his expensive boots looking bored and certain. And when the sugarbush came up, we bid. The specialty contract and the town's money and the whole golden season all turned into a number, and we laid it down. And Vance raised, smooth, and we raised. And he looked at me for the first time with something other than contempt. And he raised once more, close to his limit, testing whether the practical young man he had pegged me for would flinch. And I did not flinch. We had one more in us, just barely, the last of the contracted Vance. And we laid it down. And it was over the number a resort could justify for a ridge that would fight them for its water rights and its old right-of-ways all the way down. Vance did the math a developer does. He shook his head once and he stopped. And the auctioneer said the words, and the sugarbush was ours. My father did not cheer. He is not a man who cheers. He stood very still, and then he reached out and gripped my shoulder so hard it hurt. And he did not look at me, because if he had looked at me, he would have wept, and Earl Coburn does not weep on courthouse steps. He just held my shoulder and looked at the mountain we still owned. It was saved. The bush was ours, free and clear once the contract paid out, staying in the family. And I had stayed. Through the worst night and the cracked pan and the moment at the truck door, I had stayed, and everyone who mattered had watched me stay, and that mattered more than the mountain. My father and I had built something back that had nothing to do with syrup. On the drive home he said, gruff, looking out the window, "Your grandfather would have liked how you sold it." The story. He always said the syrup was just sap, until somebody loved it enough to tell you so. That was as close as he came to saying he was proud. It was closer than I ever thought I would get. That night we opened the tin. He took it down from the shelf himself, the founding tin, and he unwrapped the old feed sack, and he set it on the workbench in the sugar house with the whole family and Maggie and half the crew gathered around. He looked at it a long time. Then he handed it to me. "You earned it," he said. "Open it." My hands were not steady. I worked the old seal and it gave with a soft sigh, 100 years of sweetness opening up into that room. And inside was syrup gone almost to amber dark crystal at the edges. And we each took the smallest taste on the tip of a spoon, my grandfather's first batch. And it tasted like maple and like thyme, and like a thing that had waited a very long time to be worth opening. My father's eyes were wet at last, and he did not hide it. And I understood the tin at last. It was never about the syrup. It was about the seal, about whether you have the patience to save a thing, and the faith that the day will come when you have earned the right to open it. Maggie was standing beside me when I tasted it, and she took the spoon after me, and our eyes met over that 100-year-old sweetness, and she was not guarded anymore. Not all the way soft. She will never be all the way soft, and I love her for it. But the wire that had been pulled tight between us all season had gone slack and become something else. Become the thing it was before I ruined it, and more, because now it was made of things that had been broken and mended and were stronger at the mend. We took it slow after that, her and I, the way you take everything slow up on that ridge. I was not going anywhere, and for the first time she believed it, because belief is not built out of promises. It is built out of a man's hand coming off a truck door on the worst morning of his life. Spring came. The season ended, the trees closed up, and we tapped out the last buckets and cleaned the pans, and I did not leave. Summer, I did not leave. Fall, I fixed the fence I had not fixed at 25, and she watched me do it and did not say anything, but she brought me coffee, and that said it. We were married the next March, in the sugarbush, in the first warm days when the sap was just beginning to move again and the steam was rising off the sugar house. We stood among the old tapped maples my great-grandfather had cleared, my father giving me away in his own quiet fashion, standing straighter that day than he had in years. And Maggie came up the snow-melt path in a plain wool coat because it was cold and she is practical, and I had never in my life seen anything I wanted more to stay for. We poured a little of the new season's first syrup for everyone, and my father, without a word, brought out the founding tin, refilled and resealed now with the first quart of the year I saved the bush, to be passed down again, to be opened again someday by someone who earns it. So here is what I have learned, sitting on the far side of a season I nearly ran from. Sap does not care about your ambition. It moves when the cold and the warmth are right and not 1 hour before, and you cannot rush it, and you cannot fake it, and you cannot buy the patience it demands. 40 gallons of the ordinary to make 1 gallon of the sweet. That is the true rate of most things worth having. Trust is like that. It runs slow. It runs only after a long cold, and it ruins if you scorch it by rushing. Love is like that. My father's forgiveness was like that. The town's was like that. None of it came because I gave a good speech, or made a big gesture, or came home with my hands full. It came drop by drop, because I stayed through the whole slow season, through the worst night and the cracked pan and the freezing dawns, and I did the small, unglamorous work, and I did not run when running was the only thing my body knew how to do. Some things reward only the ones who stay. The trees know it. They give their sweetness to the family that tends them for 100 years, and nothing at all to the man who wants to level them for a view. Trust knows it. Love knows it most of all. I threw away the 2 best things I ever had, because I was young and afraid, and I thought staying was for people too small to dream. I know better now. Staying is the biggest thing a person can do. It is the whole dream, if you are lucky enough to figure it out before the season is gone. I am Wes Coburn. I am the man who left, and then I am the man who came home and stayed. And if you asked me which of those two men I would rather be remembered as, you already know. The sugar bush is safe. My father lived to see me marry the girl next door in the shade of his father's trees. And somewhere on a high shelf, wrapped in a feed sack, a sealed tin waits again, patient and sweet and full, for the next Coburn who learns what it costs and what it gives, to stay for the whole long season. Would you have come home to face everyone you let down?